In this video lesson, we will be solving percent questions using proportions. We have talked about proportions. Now we're just going to apply it to percent questions. Let's be sure to remember that a percent is a ratio, but it's very specific in that it compares a part to a whole of 100. Just as a reminder, an example, 20% is a fraction, or it's a ratio comparing 20 as the part out of 100. 20 out of 100 is the fraction or the ratio that we would use when setting up a proportion. Okay, let's look at a practice problem. This said that Michelle made 12 out of 20 baskets in her basketball game last night. What percent of her baskets did she make? Okay, well, let's start right off the bat with her ratio of 12 out of 20. 12 being what she made, and 20 being the total attempts that she took. Okay, well, if we want to know what that is as a percent, then we need to write this as an equivalent fraction where the total is 100, because that's what percent means, out of 100. Okay, so what we're trying to solve then is the numerator out of 100. But we need these fractions to be equivalent, so it is a proportion. So we said they're equal to each other. So what we can do then is look for relationships within or between the fractions. By within, I mean, is there a relationship between the 12 and the 20? Okay, there's not a whole number multiplicative relationship between 12 and 20. So now we're going to look between the ratios. And there is a relationship between 20 and 100. We can multiply 20 times 5 to get 100. Well, if that's the case, then we can do the same thing here at the top of this proportion by multiplying the numerator 12 times 5. And 12 times 5 equals 60. So we now know that this x, we could actually replace the x with 60. So 60 out of 100 says the same thing as 12 out of 20. Well, if you have a fraction of 60 out of 100, then that is a percent, and it is 60%. So we could say, knowing that Michelle made 12 out of 20 baskets, we know that she made 60%. Okay, practice problem number 2. Paxton got 80% of the questions correct on his math test. If he got 40 questions correct, how many questions were on the test? All right, let's write down what we know. We know that he got 40 questions correct, but we don't know how many questions were on the test. But we do know that this fraction or this ratio is equal to 80%, because it tells us he got 80% of the questions correct. So let's set that equal to 80%, or the fraction of 80 over 100. Okay, so we're looking for a relationship then within or between the ratios. If we look within the two givens, 80 and 100, there's not really a relationship there. But if we look between these two ratios, 80 and 40, you'll know that 40 is half of 80. Or hopefully you see that 40 is half of 80. So what we're doing is we're dividing 80 by 2. 80 divided by 2. So we're going to do the same thing this direction, and we're going to divide 100 by 2. Or we're going to figure out what is half of 100. Well, I think most of you know what that is, but if we divided 100 divided by 2, we're going to get 50. Okay? So the answer is 50. There were 50 questions on the test, because 40 out of 50 is equal to 80 out of 100. Now, practice problem number 3. The gumball machine at Mr. Jim's Pizza Palace has 5 red, 20 blue, 15 yellow, and 10 green gumballs. What percent of the gumballs are blue? Okay, let's take a look at this one here. First of all, anytime we're talking about a percent, we need a part over whole. Let me go ahead and write that out. A percent is a part over whole. Now remember, our whole, when we have the percentage, is out of 100%. But let's figure out what part are we talking about in this question. It says what percent of the gumballs are blue. So our blue is our part, and it's 20. But if there's 20 blue, how do we figure out what is the total? Well, we have to add up all of the others. We have 5 red, 20 blue, 15 yellow, and 10 green. So you basically are adding all of that up. We're adding 5 plus 20 plus 15 plus 10. And when you add all that up, you get a total of 50. So we know that 20 out of 50 of the gumballs are blue. Well, what percent is that? Well, we can use a proportion to figure that out by finding an equivalent fraction that says something out of 100. Okay, so we've set up our proportion. Now we need to look for our relationships. Is there a relationship within the ratio, or is there a relationship between the ratio? Hopefully you can tell right away that this 50 becomes a 100 by multiplying times 2. Well, if we multiply the 50 times 2, or the whole times 2, we also multiply the part times 2. And our answer is going to be whatever we get for 20 times 2. And 20 times 2 equals 40. So we know what percent of the gumballs were blue, and that answer is 40%. Okay, that is a look at using proportions to solve percent questions.